One person. All right, so far. I'm gonna pause it for a minute, and then we'll begin. All right. All right, guys. Welcome. We got two people. It's a good start. How's it going? Good Sunday afternoon, early evening. So I guess we can get started. If you have some questions, throw them up. We did have the Saturday Academy test this weekend, the practice test. 50 people said they were going to. 50 of my students said they were going to show up. We only had 34, so I was a little disappointed by that number, less than I was hoping to see. But from the scores, they were varied. I can't say that I was really disappointed. There were a lot of scores that I was like, wow, I'm impressed. I'm really happy to see that. And there were other scores that I was like, not so much. It was a very, pretty wide variety of types of scores. But, I think it really shows that the more you guys practice, the more, obviously over the course of the last 2 years, you guys have been putting in a lot of work, and some more than others, and that obviously pays off. But it's not too late yet. We still have, a few more days, and there are a lot of resources available to you guys that you can continue reviewing. So remember, next Saturday, so there's not going to be any after school review this week, but on Saturday there will be one final big giant review session that will be held in the auditorium this coming Saturday, the 11th, and I believe it's from 8 to 12. So show up, bring some paper and pencils and a notebook, take a lot of notes, ask a lot of questions, come ready to ask questions. Although I don't think it's going to be too much in terms of questions. I think it's going to be more just straight going through the review, hitting all the most key points, make sure we're not missing anything important. But are you guys here? Can I get a hello from the chat? Oh God, no, please no. Yeah, I figured, the reason I was playing the throat singing was because one of the last times we did this, unfortunately, I thought I had a picture up that had text on it that said, Mr. Casey will be right back if you're seeing this, because I wanted to put that up before we started so people at least could start getting on and logging on. But apparently it didn't work, and a lot of people were confused, saying, I don't know, I don't think it's working. Is Casey actually broadcasting? Are we live streaming? So I figured if I put Mongolian throat singing, there would be no confusion. It's definitely Casey. But yeah, what I was saying was, and guys, please, I'm just vamping until you hit me with some questions here. Hey, what up? New people joining. So yeah, I'm waiting for some questions, but as we're getting started, I'll probably have to repeat this if more people come on. But I really want to emphasize today, as we're answering questions and discussing stuff, like, from this point on, this is the last
into the free AP lecture for you, but if you want to join over 90% of my students in passing the AP test, then check out the links below. I've got writing guides, review guides, instruction guides.
My bad, just give me a sec. All right, we're good. Sorry about that. So yeah, I really want to put an emphasis on the resources that are available to you guys that I've specifically set up for you and provided you with. This is the last type of thing we're doing in terms of an out-of-school review. We're going to still do some Kahoot this week and next week right before the test, but there are no more, from me at least, review sessions after school. This is the final Sunday Q&A Café. I got my cha right here. Always with milk and sugar. I recommend tea with milk and sugar. But there's nothing else from me. So at this point, it's up to you. You do have, thankfully, the Saturday final review, and you're going to have, another 8 days of class instruction. But at this point, there is a lot available to you guys. So I just want to start off by, and again, guys, I see one question on there. It's a skills question, but keep them coming. Once I finish this little bit, I'll jump right into it. But I want to share the screen with you guys to show you guys what we have going on in terms of resources available to you. I have to do a little updating on it, but it's pretty good so far. Here we go, beautiful. So take a look, guys. This is MrCaseyHistory.com, my beautiful website that you know well. But this is specifically the section for AP World Review. I have, if you just look right here, it's MrCaseyHistory.com/AP World Review. That's all you need to type in. I'll keep promoting that link for you guys as much as I can, reminding you to go to that page. Actually, unfortunately, I don't have it up here in the search bar or the menu bar, but hopefully I'll add it for you guys. But look at this, take a look. There's a lot here that's really, really valuable. So this is the link for the live stream today. But below that, I recently added on, I messaged you guys about this, 2 text-based websites that you can go to for a lot of review. I know you've heard of them before because if you guys are doing the homework, you guys have been doing the videos on YouTube with the packets, the review, and they always give a shout out to AP Worldopedia and Freemanpedia. And particularly, especially last week, but even before, I've been including more and more resources from this from these 2 sites, especially this second one, Freemanpedia, in my after-school reviews because they're really useful graphics and visuals. So this page right here, AP Worldopedia, is mostly summaries of the course material based on the key concepts from the AP. It's a work in progress, so he's doing a great job, the teacher who's doing it, but it's a work in progress, so some sections are not completed, they're not there, but for the majority of them, they are. So if there's a certain section of things that you want more detail on, this is one resource you can go to. This resource, Freemanpedia, is great for just kind of clicking through. If there's a time period or something that you kind of want to familiarize yourself more with the broad concepts, this is a great resource for that. It has a lot of maps. You can see this map right here is a great one. It's just packed with information. If you're a type of person that likes maps and graphics, a lot crammed into a small space, this is a great one for you. You can see commerce, raw materials, revolutions, empires, like everything is kind of labeled on here, arrows, global migrations. So this is a really great website. Then we have, for each period, we have the concept review, which is the video you guys have been doing. With the concept review packet. Again, that's been the homework that you guys have had for each period. Then we have the review lecture from a different source. So the first one is Mr. Lassiter, I believe his name is. I don't want to mention his name incorrectly. Then the second one is Mr. Morgan, not our Mr. Morgan, but another Mr. Morgan, who does the AP review lectures. And let's just click on that real quick. Or I can click on one of these up here to show you because I've said this a million times, I know, in class, but just I got to repeat it again. It's beautiful that they have timestamps down here. So I would just click on the videos, even if you don't, click them and pause them, and then just skim through down here. Anything that looks unfamiliar to you, okay, Wilson's 14 points. Yeah, I know that. League of Nations, I know that. Colonial unrest. I think I know what that's about. Let me double check. Let me click it. You can click that one and look between this one and the next one. It's like a minute and a half. In a minute and a half, you'll know whether or not you have a good handle on that topic. And he's pretty good. He's pretty thorough with his information. So I really recommend checking that out. And we have it for every period. Those are all on here. I also have these videos we're doing now. I have them linked up here. So if there was a day you weren't able to be here, and again, guys, for those who just came on or in general, feel free to hit me with questions right now. I'm just going to keep going with this until I get some good questions. But I do want to show you guys. So I have the Sunday Q&A cafes like we're doing here for each one that I've done. We have the AP After School Academy that I've been doing on Wednesdays and Fridays. The links are under each one. You can see, right? AP World Academy 1, 2. And then the Kahoots that we've done in class, any ones we've done so far. And we're going to do them again this week, and I'll post them as well. So, the reason I'm showing you this now is one, just in general, to focus on, Freemanpedia is the best, right? To give you guys a focus on, from today forward, especially next weekend, when you're probably going to be cramming and trying to shove as much knowledge into your mind as possible. These are great resources that you can use when we don't have any review session going on. And, of course, it's tailored to you because you're working on it individually. But also today, if you guys are hitting me with questions, I'm going to try, when possible, to say, okay, I'll give you some thoughts in general, but now let's look at these resources and see how we can find an answer to that question with those resources. So hopefully that will enable you guys moving forward to have an easier time using those resources and getting answers quickly whenever you need. So I'm still waiting for some content questions, although I do have a question here about AP multiple choice. Let me just pull up if I can. My phone is a bit under the weather, we could say. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do a live stream on my phone. Let's see. No, wanted to try to get more people up and coming on. Hey, you guys can always Instagram live me from your screen and send it out. Try to get more people on here. But what is a good AP multiple choice section score? I mean, the higher the better. I saw scores that were in the 30s. I saw scores that were in the 80s. Nobody got 100, but I think the highest one I saw was 89, and I think that's terrific. I don't think that you need to get 100 in order to do well on the AP exam, but remember, and I can pull this up for you as well, the score is 40% based on, this one, I want to pull up the visual for you guys. The score is based on your multiple choice very heavily. So that's definitely something that you want to make sure you're doing well on. If you got below 65, I think that definitely means you want to be making some progress on that. I think of it the same way you think of any exam score. In the beginning of ninth grade when we did AP style multiple choice questions, and I said, hey man, it's really tough. It's your first time with it, so at this early point, even if it's not a great score, that's okay. At this point, it's 8 days till the test or 8 class days till the test. They should be good, right? The higher the better. Again, I'm going to pull up for you I know the person who asked that, I know you were at the review session on Friday, but just to show one more time to everybody, again, until I get some specific questions, otherwise I'm going to start rambling. I wanted to show you guys the page from the AP again of the test and what the expectations are, how the test is broken down. So let's look at that. You guys can see this, right? So exam overview, you guys should know this pretty well already, and especially if you went to take the test. By the way, tell me, like, my question to you, for those of you, did you guys go on Saturday to do the test? And if so, how did you feel about it? What did you gain from the experience? What did it change your perception about any part of the test? Like, were you worried about one thing, but now you're worried about another? Did it confirm some of your concerns? Let me know what's your feedback from that. But if we look right here, multiple choice, 40% of your exam, right? Just like you guys did on the practice test, 55 questions, 55 minutes. Short answer, 20% of the exam. And then you have your 2 essays, which together make up another 40%, but the DBQ is 25 and the LEQ is 15. And this is all, you can get this from my website. If you don't know where else to go to about on mrcasehistory.com and just click AP World Exam and it'll give you that information. So, the better you can do, the better. I think the thing with multiple choice is, with any multiple choice, it's more diverse. There's more of a variety of topics. So you might not get some, but you might get others. But then when it comes to like things like the short answer, it is what it is. And hopefully you have something you can talk about. So I don't think that there's necessarily, what I mean by that is, if you're not prepared for that, then that can really bring you down, even though it's only a smaller percentage, still a good percent of your test. So, try to be balanced, and hopefully if you guys went to do the test, it helps you get a better sense of where you need to improve the most, and what kinds of things you could be reviewing. It was scary at first, but not that bad. I thought it was going to be worse. The SAQs and the essays were not as bad. The multiple choice was worse. Yeah. I think a lot of people go into it saying that. Those multiple choice ones are tough, and sometimes when they give you the open end, you can kind of just say what you want to say, but with the multiple choice, you start second guessing yourself. We'll definitely do a day this week where I'll just give you guys a bunch of multiple choice questions and have you guys go at it in groups or individually and just analyze and try to figure out what are some, we've done this so many times after IAs where we look at questions and try to figure out what's the trick here, what's the why are we getting this wrong? Is this a fair question? Is it not a fair question? There are going to be unfair questions on the AP exam. They're not all perfect. And they're going to be fair questions that are really, really tricky. Like there's something about that question. So we really need to think like, try to think of it in the way a teacher would think of it, making the question. You know the content. You know, for each topic, there's some general ideas that they expect you to know, and then there's like the little nuanced details that they hope that you know. If you see a question about a particular topic, think to yourself, what are the things that somebody who's making an AP exam might want to see if I know? What are they going to try to test me on? That's what it's a test, right? We're trying to figure out, did you learn what you needed to learn? Did you learn all the AP stuff? So when they create a question, they're starting from the end. They're saying, okay, here's something we want to test them on. I want to know if they know, something about the gender roles in Japan, right? And then what's the main ideas about that? What are the key points? And now how can we craft a question around that concept? So maybe they find a good document that they think highlights a certain concept they want to make reference to, and then they're going to ask you a question to see if you are able to pick up on what it is about that document that suggests this thing. But it's not just like, oh, I'm going to read the document and try to understand it deeply and analyze it. You need to already go into that question saying, okay, this is about women and it's about Japan. Here, let me run through, make a short list in my mind of what this question might actually, what they might be trying to get the answer to be. And then let me look at the document, let me look at the choices and see if I can confirm that for myself. Does that make sense? Let me know if that was confusing or if that gave you an idea of what I'm talking about. Try to think from the mindset of the teacher. What are the things I'm expected to know? What are the key points they want me to know about it? And where are they fitting that into this test, right? They're trying to squeeze everything in. Nowadays, with the multiple choice being the way it is with the documents, there's less diversity in multiple choice. It'll jump right from something in period 4 and all of a sudden you're in period 5. And there's a bunch of period 4 stuff that you were studying so hard about and it didn't even come up, right? But also keep in mind, like they are trying to make the test thorough. So something that doesn't come up in multiple choice, right? You might think, okay, that might be something that they're going to be trying to fit in the short answers. So when you look at the short answer, you might, okay, we didn't hear anything about the Ottoman Empire or rulers during the period 4 we talked about on Friday. Rulers during period 4, the way they consolidate their empires. That hasn't come up in any multiple choice. Maybe that'll be part of the LEQ. Maybe that'll be part of an SAQ, right? So if they're going to try to put as many things in there as possible. Let's see, what else would you guys say? What is app analysis? Is it happy analysis? Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding what he meant by that, it's the APP side of happy. I think generally the H. So remember, the Y isn't really one of the types of analysis you can do. It's more to say like, the way I always explain it is, it's why is this related, or why does this support my argument, right? I still stand by happy as a useful acronym, and that is how it's reflected in the rubric. HAPP, really, historical context, audience, point of view, perspective. I think focusing on the APP, the app part of it, is, whereas historical context is kind of its own thing, APP, that kind of goes together. Like all three of them, you don't have to just do one. Sometimes you're kind of doing all three. And to kind of try to do all three instead of just one, if you're already doing like point of view, you might be able to also throw in there audience and purpose, because they all kind of go together. It's somebody talking, who are they talking to, and what's the purpose of them talking, right, or writing. So I think that's probably what he meant by that, and I think that that's a good idea, to kind of round out your analysis. So you don't just say like, oh, this person has this point of view. It might not be enough. Like it might be too brief of an analysis to get the point. Obviously, you don't want to spend all your time trying to elaborate on one analysis and lose time to do other ones. But I think that's something you can do is to say, okay, hey, you know what? As long as I'm already doing point of view or perspective, what's their purpose? If they believe, in the, say you're doing the one on the Buddhism in China, right? If this Confucian scholar he's talking to you have a Confucian scholar. Oh, his audience is the emperor of China, right? So his audience is the emperor of China, and that's why this is relevant because he's talking. But the purpose of talking to him is to convince him that Buddhism is bad for the Chinese society and they should cling to Confucianism. And because that's his point of view as a Confucian scholar, he believes that Confucianism is superior, that Buddhism is a threat. So you see, like, it's almost hard to not overlap APP. They all kind of go together in one thing. And then historical context, you could do it all. You really could do HAPP, and not or. Because at that time in China, Buddhism had grown in strength and was having increasing political power. So therefore, the Chinese bureaucrats who were Confucian scholars were more concerned about the growing influence of Buddhists. And so their purpose was to try to discourage the rulers from giving them more of an influence in government. And so their audience was the emperor of China, right? All that is the analysis portion, right? And you kind of included all H, A, P, and P in that, right? Does that make sense? So sometimes it's more than one of them, but you don't feel like you have to do all four every time. It's just whatever makes the most sense for your argument. Why is the most important one, right? It has to connect back to your argument. What are the internal reasons for the collapse of the Ottoman Empire? Okay, keep the questions coming, guys. So remember Ottoman Empire, and I'll try to pull up some stuff from the website for you as well as we talk about this. But the Ottoman Empire, it's a big empire in terms of world history and AP world, because it goes from period 4, really period 3, in its origins. Although we don't talk about it too much, the big, it gets its start with the earliest leader Osman, and the Turkic peoples living in Anatolia in Asia Minor, but it doesn't really pick up until 1453, which is just over the line into period 4, the conquest of Constantinople. And then through period 4, it grows. You have people like Suleiman the Magnificent, and other Ottoman emperors who build up the empire very heavily, build up the bureaucracy, and expand territorially into Europe. I'm just kind of giving it some background. Expand territorially into Europe, and also expand in terms of their trade, build up the society, really powerful empire. And then as we go further into period 4, one of the problems is the Europeans expand in trade, right, into the Indian Ocean and also across the Atlantic. The across the Atlantic is more of an indirect threat because, and I know we're getting there. It's a big empire. It lasts for a long time. So the Atlantic change is more of a broad shift because the trade now, and there's a whole new world of trade opportunities, and it really has shifted the power dynamic completely. But even in the old world, and this is more direct to the Ottoman Empire's power and trade routes, is that Europeans have found they can get around Africa. They're on the southern tip of Africa. They've entered the Indian Oceans with the Portuguese, right? People like Da Gama and his friends. And they have reached, they've reached the Indian Ocean. They've begun trading and establishing the trading post empires, dominating Indian Ocean trade, and they've kind of bypassed the Ottoman Empire. So that was, when it comes to like scholarship around the Ottoman Empire, sometimes people overdo this or there's criticism of it, but it's kind of like the long decline. Whenever people talk about the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Empire was in decline. When was it not in decline? Going from the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, somebody's always going to describe it as being in decline at some point or another. it increases and decreases. When we come to more modern times, though, when we come to the end of period 5 and beginning of period 6, well, the Ottoman Empire kind of comes to an end right around the beginning of period 6, because beginning of period 6 is World War One, right? So when you think about the internal reasons for the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, you can think about a lot of the issues that were happening in terms of nationalism in period 5 throughout Europe that also affected the Ottoman Empire, and imperialism that affected the Ottoman Empire. So I guess an external one would be European imperialism taking over North Africa. Egypt was under a certain degree of British control, although they had been sort of kind of separate from the Ottoman Empire for a little while. But that's a big breadbasket, right? We talked about that even back to period 1. But internally, especially in probably most famously in Europe, in Southeastern Europe, the Balkans, right? The Ottomans are struggling to maintain control over their territories, their European territories, primarily those Christian territories. People that did not feel much of affinity towards the Ottoman Empire. They were struggling to deal with these nationalist groups, right? Ever since the French Revolution sparked this nationalist revolutionary spirit across Europe. We saw Greece get independence early on from the Ottoman Empire. And from then on, it's just, you can look at maps of, year by year, like little bits and pieces are falling away. At times, Western Europeans were supporting the nationalist groups against the Ottoman Empire, which is ironic because sometimes those same governments were suppressing revolutionaries in their own countries or in neighboring countries. We don't want France to revolt, but it's fine for the Greeks to be free from the Ottomans. The Greeks were, that was the birthplace of Western civilization. And we can't have them under the control of some Eastern power, right? The Ottomans. But then also when you look at the Crimean War, which we don't talk about too much, but there was a concern that if the Ottoman Empire declines too much, then Russia will get too powerful. But really those nationalisms in the Balkans, nationalist movements among Slavic peoples and others in the region that wanted to break free. They also had the same problem as Austria-Hungary, right? What had been the Austrian Habsburg Empire, Holy Roman Empire, if you go back. And Russia is struggling with that as well to an extent in that same region. This region where empires control smaller nations of people that don't have their own state. That was the norm throughout most of history, but in more modern times, there's a movement towards, kind of ethnic-based, mostly ethnic and language-based nation states, right? If you're a group of people that has a common language, a common culture, then there's an expectation that you will have your own state. And then that's in the 1800s in the Ottoman Empire. And then as we get closer and even into World War I, we learned about the Arab Revolt within the Ottoman Empire, where, we talked about the British getting involved because the Ottomans obviously picked the wrong side, the losing side in World War I. They sided with the Germans, their pals, would help them, giving them a lot of industrial support, things like that. But they had the Arab Revolt within, and guys, feel free to ask me more questions. I'm happy to switch over to a new question. They had the Arab Revolt. The British really reached out to the Sharif of Mecca, Hussein bin Ali, and offered him, their support. Hey, we don't like the Ottoman Turks. You don't like them. This is the Arab world. You should be, really hyped them up with that nationalism. Hey, Arab world should be ruled by Arabs. And you guys have a great history, a proud history of the early Umayyad or Abbasid caliphates, right? You guys used to be great. Come on, don't let the Turks have all the glory. You should take it back from them, and kind of inspired that Arab nationalism. And of course, that didn't really work out so well for those Arab states, many of which became British and French mandates. And we're actually going to talk about that quite a bit this week, or talk about the Middle East kind of leading up to today. But another factor too is just reform movements within the country. Not that different from some of the things we looked at when we looked at Iran more recently last month. That the government wanted to start making more reforms, military reforms, political reforms, social reforms. And some of those reforms were met with resistance, but other reforms, especially some of the up-and-coming younger groups, so we can look at, if you Google like the Young Ottomans or the Young Turks, who came later, people who were basically saying like, this is not enough reform. One of the big things is, and this is often the case, so I mentioned Iran with the Shah, 100 or less than 100 years later, a few decades later, was, hey, we're willing to make some reforms, but we're not going to limit our power as rulers. We're not going to accept constitutional monarchy, or even more so, step down from power and accept like having a republic, having a democratic type system. And that leads to conflict between, up and coming government people and bureaucrats and political revolutionaries. And if you look back to some of the things, well, let's since we were talking about it, let's see if we can find anything on, and I see that good question about Spain as well. Can you just let me know, was that from period 5 or period 6, the question about Spain, that the reference, just so I know where to focus? I'm going to pull up some of our websites here. I want to focus on this one. Let's see if we got something good in here. This is period 6. So I'm looking at the AP review videos, the secondary ones from AP, Mr. Morgan's AP teaching. Let's see if we have anything good on the Ottomans. This is, and I'm waiting for an answer on that. He doesn't talk too much about the Ottomans here. Let me see. So, oh, here we go. Attempts to industrialize. Yeah, that's up. See, look, this is why I think this is such a great resource, because it's always going to be something that, one teacher focuses on more than another. I was focusing more on the nationalist movements and conflicts with political reformers, and now he's talking about industrialization with the Ottoman Empire. So I think that's also a valuable, topic to refresh on. So let's see if we can just click that. It's very short. Let me see if I can pull this up for you guys. Actually, I really want to urge you guys. I really want to encourage you guys to check out more of this kind of stuff and give yourselves the opportunity to review through that. So let me share this screen with you. Let me know if the sound and everything is coming through as well. So look, we're looking at this right here: attempts to industrialize, coerced labor, right? All of these things, like, look through these topics. If something here goes, what? Something seems unfamiliar to you, just click it. Most of them are like a minute, 2 minutes long of him just going over a couple of things. So it's so useful to be able. Arab Revolt, look, Arab Revolt right there. He talks about it for 2 minutes. That's during the Ottoman Empire. End of empires: Ottoman Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Russian Empire. That literally covers all of them in 1 minute. Let's watch it.
What else do we have here? We also have the end of some empires, officially. Yep.
You can put it on quicker time as well.
What's becoming 1922? Turkey. Where the empires are also in, or shrink, I guess you'd say. Russian Empire district disappeared because we now have the Soviet Union, which we'll talk about after this.
No, the captions aren't that great.
Yep, end of Austro-Hungarian Empire. And not the end of, but the reduction of the German Empire too. So as these empires end, we have some new countries emerge, but let's talk about why they're going to emerge. So there's a president of the United States that had some really cool ideas about how to make the world a better and more peaceful place after World War I. Wilson, ready to give a speech? He had 14 points. We don't talk about 14, obviously.
I'll come back to that. Well, now he didn't go too much detail in there at all, but let's look at this. Ottoman Empire and Selim III.
Ottoman Empire to industrialize, and that's through Selim the Third, the Sultan Selim the Third.
Selim, but okay. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those things.
So that's underlined. All right, what he's going to do is he's going to realize that his agricultural-based economy is a little bit too behind. So what he's going to try to do is he's going to try to industrialize and westernize his military. So what he's going to do is he's going to try to reform the military by hiring a bunch of French advisors and industrialists to try to help them catch up with the West. And so he's going to get some opposition, though. So here, I'll write that for now. He's going to hire French.
Oops. You get the idea. So, you know, I'm not going to spend the whole time playing you guys a video of somebody else, but that's definitely something you guys can check out, and I really urge you guys to look at that. I can even go to EP Worldopedia. If you could just let me know, we're looking at that Spain one, right? So let's use this as an example. Hold on. How do I get back to stop share? What you said it was from period 6. Do you have any more narrowing down of it? It'll help me find it on the website. Period 6, but what subsection? Is it 6.1, 0.2? I'll look as you're typing, but and guys, I'm hearing a lot of questions from the same person. There's 2 other people that are on here that haven't mentioned anything yet, so would love to hear from you guys. We've been at this for 40 minutes. I'm just going to keep hyping these websites. I'm going to pull this up. Period 6. Period 6 is not too fleshed out on AP Worldopedia. Premiumpedia is pretty good. Contemporary period. I imagine it's probably related to the Franco era in Spain that you're looking for. So let me see if there's anything good on here as you're looking for that. We don't have a ton about we don't get a ton about Franco. You can see I pull a picture up of him as well. Nice article connected with this as well. It's just the Wikipedia. Franco is Spain. So Franco was a dictator that ruled in Spain. You know, it's part of was one of the fascist leaders of Europe during that period. But we often, I think he often gets overlooked because he didn't play a major role in World War II. There was a civil war taking place in Spain, and so that it didn't play so much of a role. It didn't really get involved in that war. But because it wasn't involved in the war, because it wasn't on the losing side of the war, Franco remained in power in Spain until the 70s. Let me see. Yeah, until 1975. So he came to power in 1936, if I'm not mistaken, and then he was in power until 1975. Yeah, so pretty extensive rule, and it was a period where Spain really. So one of the things that he was really focused on was he wanted Spain to be united. Right, we've talked about. Consolidation of power and the concerns of rulers. Some of them are tolerant, like cultural tolerance, religious tolerance, and others are looking to be culturally uniform. And he really wanted Spain to be culturally uniform. Spain is a diverse place. There's a lot of different languages, not just Spanish. So Spanish is really the Castilian language from central Spain, or northern central Spain. But there are other local languages. There are the Basque people, which is not an Indo-European language at all, which is a fascinating group. they are right on the border of Spain and France. You have the Catalan people in Catalonia, Barcelona, which is where Barcelona is, and there's a strong movement today to have independence from Spain even now, and Galicia, other regions of Spain where they have different regional languages and cultures that, he was not interested in that being the case. He wanted everybody to be Spanish, and Spanish languages enforced and other local languages were suppressed. And there was violence that was used. And, he's usually grouped, like I said, within the fascist that, he maybe wasn't like as fascist as others, but certainly an authoritarian, very conservative policies. Let me see if we have anything on him in the video. So we have Spanish Civil War. We have a pretty good, maybe 5-minute thing on the Spanish Civil War. So let's pull this up. Let me see do I still have you guys here? I'll show you where this is. I'm not going to play you the whole thing, but I'll play you a clip of it just so you can see, and hopefully that can be something you can look more into. Where'd you guys go? I can't find you. Come on, Zoom. Where are you? Sorry, guys. There you are. Hey, everybody. Section 6. Very nice. Very detailed. Section 2, letter D. Yeah, so let me see if I can, let's do it this way. I'll pull up the video for you guys, and then while that's playing, I'll find it on the, this guy as well. There we go, share. And we had it right here. So take a look. We got Spanish Civil War. Spanish Civil War, Republican versus Nationalist, foreign aid, blitzkrieg and firebombing, opposition to violence, and Picasso, Guernica. So that's the painting that you guys saw in the video right the other day, famous painting depicting the violence. Probably one of the most famous Picasso paintings, and especially for a history class related to historical events, political events. So let's just click on that and see what we got.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Actually, communists are targeted. But what about give me an ethnic group? Jews, right? Jews, Gypsies, Slavs, etc. Yeah, non-Aryan. Okay, those are fascists, and of course, who fits this description? There's two. Hitler and Mussolini, right? All right. Now into that, we have the Spanish Civil War. Crap, 3 years. So look it up. Spanish Civil War. There's two sides. Let's start falling into the years. So we've got the Republicans versus the Nationalists. Just 1939?
Oh, sorry.
36?
36.
There we go. This is in Spain. And we wouldn't normally care about Spain at this point in world history because they're not really that relevant, or European history because they're not not relevant. So let's talk about who these groups are first, and we'll talk about why we care about this war. So the Republicans, these were legally voted in. That's why they get the name Republicans. Spain was a republic, so they were voted in totally legally, non-controversial. But what kind of people were these Republicans that were voted in? They were communists, yes. They were communists and socialists. Okay. And the Nationalists, they're run by a guy named Francisco Franco. And what kind of people are these? Well, I can tell you they don't like communists.
So they're
Okay. That's the Nationalist Party. They're very pro-nationalist and they're anti-communist. So they would be? Yeah, the Fascist Party. Okay. So the reason why we care about the Spanish Civil War is there's a lot of foreign aid here. And it's like a practicing ground for World War II, especially for the Germans. So who are the Nazis and Italians, Nazi Germany and Italians in that support here? So who's going to help out the Republicans over here, the communists? USSR, Stalin, right?
This is good stuff right here. You didn't spend
much
time talking about
and
Civil War.
These guys win by a lot more because they have a much better economy. Why is their economy so much better?
This is definitely something you guys can check out to get some review.
They're not correct.
As well as the other resources.
There's no central plan. That's true. What did Germany just do that reinvigorate their economy? Yeah, they used the Keynes economic spending, right? The German economy, military, much further ahead. Okay, so we get the nationals get the W. But again, we don't really care that Spain becomes a fascist state until 1971, which it does, which sucks for them. But why do we care about this continent?
Because that's when Germany tests out their new
Yep, this is why we care. Germany tests out new technology and tactics. And what are the two things they test out here? Blitzkrieg, which is lightning war, right? Their new strategy of exactly firebombing. So Blitzkrieg, air bombing.
All right, so I'll just pause it there. Just to give you an idea of some of this information that's available to you. What led to the Cuban Missile Crisis? So that way, I know we did a lesson on that. If you guys remember, you had to advocate for some of the different approaches to how should the government of the United States try to resolve the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's going to start because, so right before the Cuban Missile Crisis, just a couple of years before, you have the Bay of Pigs invasion, right? And a few years before that, you have Fidel Castro come to power. So this is early mid Cold War. We've already had one major conflict, at least from the perspective of the United States, which is the Korean War. But now, and this is before we get into Vietnam. So between those two conflicts, we have the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this was a big deal because there was the danger of a possible hot, breakout of a nuclear conflict between the United States and Russia. The government that was previously in Cuba was friendly to the United States, but not so terrific for the people who lived in Cuba. A lot of people obviously did not like the Batista government, and he was overthrown in a communist rebellion. You got to remember, though, and this is something that I think, especially Cuba, often gets overlooked because they were not as directly in. I think we often don't think of Cuba and a lot of Latin American countries as being imperialized in this period. But the legacy of imperialism is really widespread throughout the quote-unquote global. I don't like any of these terms, but the global South, the third world. But you know what we're talking about, right? I think it's just an indirect way of saying the non-white world, unfortunately. But Latin America, Asia, primarily Asia below China, sometimes including China, and pretty much most of Africa, to an extent the Middle East, depending on how you're looking at it. But really the whole third world construct starts during the Cold War, the idea that these are the countries that are neither aligned specifically with the United States or with the Soviet Union. And as we really I tried to push this idea in class that, these countries are much more concerned with anti-imperialism than they are with the economic philosophies of capitalism and communism. They care less about that at this point, right? They only care about them insofar as they are either one, primarily, especially in the case of communism or capitalism, but really both, going to allow them to get support from one of those two big powers. Like, hey, if I act more one way or the other, maybe I'll get you guys to support me in some kind of a way. But also, especially in terms of communism often appeals to the third world countries because there's a lot of overlap between communism and anti-imperialism, or at least Russia would really like to draw that parallel, highlight that parallel, so that they can use, the fact that the third world quote unquote nations are mostly the formerly colonized parts of the world, and say, hey, you hate imperialism, right? And you would love to be free from imperialism. Well, communism is about the people who are being oppressed rising up against their oppressors, and we're talking about that in a social class construct. But hey, you know what? That's kind of the same thing as you guys, right? It's close enough, so you should be communist. That is appealing enough, I guess, to people in Cuba. And Fidel Castro is a leader of the revolution against this government that they feel is very U.S. friendly and influenced and maybe, to some extent controlled by the United States. And they overthrow them and they create a new government, and then becomes a communist government, and they are closely allied with the Russians. And America tries to overthrow them with the Bay of Pigs invasion. As you guys know, the CIA was doing tons of these, coup attempts throughout the period, trying to overthrow governments. And this one did not go particularly well for them. They kind of got exposed, the tea got spilled, and people realized that the Cubans that were coming in to overthrow were actually trained by the United States and sent there to overthrow the Castro government. So that's only going to just make his government seem, like the one that's being attacked. Like they're the bad guy. We're the ones who are under siege for no reason or whatever. That's the way they can spin it to their people, right? And so soon after that, they acquire ballistic missiles from Russia. And there was reconnaissance planes going over Russia and over Cuba from America, and they saw that these weapons existed. And so because of that, it was possible, the possibility that, or the concern that, hey, Russia is putting their missiles in Cuba right on America's doorstep, and this gives them the capacity to bomb us, to attack our cities, from right next to us. And America obviously is not comfortable with that, and so they want them to get rid of those weapons. And it was a tense few days, really, as this conflict emerged, and they tried to very carefully, navigate how harsh should we be? Should we have airstrikes? Should we just have sanctions? Should there be a blockade? Should we do nothing? What should we do? Ultimately, thankfully, the crisis was averted, and there was no breakout of violent war. But it was a very fearful time, because there was this concern that this might actually break out into that. Still, I could take one more question, guys. We're about to run out of time. Unfortunately, we didn't get to do too many questions today. But that's why I really wanted to emphasize those resources online. You have a couple more days before this test. I'm just going to keep trying to give you guys resources. Everybody's different. Everybody has different things they need to review. So just keep at it, guys. Just spend your time, make sure that you do this and break it up. Don't try to wait until Wednesday night next week to start reviewing. Tonight you have some time. Next weekend you'll have time. Just keep at it. Keep reviewing. When it comes to multiple choice, as one of you guys was saying earlier, if you haven't done so already, go to the store and buy an AP review book and get all those multiple choice questions. You have some multiple choice questions in your textbook. Use those. Practice every single multiple choice question in your textbook. I know it's only 3 per chapter, but there are 38 chapters in your textbook. So do all of them. And we'll definitely do some this week as well. I really wish the best for you guys. And I know you guys have been working real hard all year, especially the people who are here for, online on a Sunday. So I really hope that if there's anything else I can do, you let me know. I took out 10 books from the library. Yo, crushing it. That's amazing. Yeah, man, don't go to the library. Don't worry about wasting your money on a book that you're going to use for 8 days, right? If you can get it from the library, if there's even any left, I'm sure everyone's hitting the library at this point, but if you can go to your local library or the school library or anywhere, you guys at NYC, so you have a lot available to you. Kaplan AP Prep, yeah. One of my students from last year, she was, we were just chatting, or from 2 years ago rather, she just took the AP exam last year, but I had her in 9th grade. She got a 5 on the AP. Very hardworking student, really just digging into all the details. And now everyone's different, but I said, hey, what's your advice? What would you say to students who are trying to do well in the AP? How did you get a 5? She goes, well, I don't know about anybody else, but I read every single bit of those review books. And she was very dedicated to taking notes and jotting things down and going into the details. She crushed it. She got a 5. So, you get out what you put in. And the more you practice, the better off you'll be. I think you guys hopefully saw that with the practice test. So that being said, thank you guys once again for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you guys this week and wrapping this thing up. So peace out.